In this second lesson on mixed numbers, we're going to just carry on with a couple of pointers for specific situations that we didn't get to talk about in the last video. So it's just a continuation. So first of all, how to deal with negative fractions. I already touched upon that in the last video. It wasn't a negative fraction if you've seen it recently or if you saw that lesson, but we had a -3. So just dealing with negative numbers in general is important. So the negative sign can be in the numerator, the denominator, or out in front. However, they all represent the same value. So -2/3 is the same as -2/3. And that's exactly the same as 2 over -3. As long as there's one negative sign anywhere in a fraction, it's negative overall. It's easier to work with if we write the negative sign in the numerator, like the middle one. So we want to go with this one. Let's write it, make a nice circle around this, not a yucky one. There we go. We want to go with this one. And the reason is just because it, to me, it makes logical sense to think of it on the top there. But mostly it's about consistency. If I always put the negative sign on top, then I'll never even have to think about it and things will always work out. Even if I'm doing stuff like dividing a fraction that involves me flipping a fraction upside down. So say I was dividing by -2/3. That would mean I'd have to flip it and multiply by 3/2. I would leave that negative sign up top and I'd make it -3/2 in that situation. Just keep it up top and you'll save yourself a lot of problems. Also, when converting from mixed to improper fractions, when a negative is involved, the negative's not part of the converting procedure. All right? So that's important to remember. It just stays in front. So the negative number just stays in front. We don't have to do anything with it. In fact, while we're converting from a mixed number to an improper fraction, forget about it. Just put that negative sign up front. Either do it first or do it at the end. I'm going to do it at the end. So for example, I'm going to pretend that negative isn't there in this first example, -3 2/5. I'm going to pretend it's not there. I'm just going to do 3 times 5 is 15, plus 2 is 17. Put it over the 5, and then I'll stick the negative back out front. And not really even out front, I'll put it on the numerator like we discussed above. And again, if I always do the same thing, it makes things easy for me. So let's work with a couple of examples. The first one, we got a couple fractions, mixed fractions in brackets. In brackets means multiply. So this is a multiplication question. So let's convert. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5, over 2. And I'm going to stick that negative sign on the top. Instead of using brackets, I could use brackets, but I'm just going to switch to a times sign. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 is 16 on the top, 3 on the bottom. Now remember, we could multiply top times top and bottom times bottom, but it's helpful to see what we can reduce first. And I see that 2 goes into 2 and 16, so to make it easier on myself, I'm going to reduce first. Now I have -5 times 8 is -40 over 1 times 3, which is 3. So you notice how that negative sign just stays up top when I multiply. And already, because I reduced as I went along, I don't have to reduce later. I can avoid working with those bigger numbers. If I want to change it back to a mixed fraction, that's easy enough. Again, forget about the negative sign. Just do 40 divided by 3. 3 goes into 40 13 times with 1 left over. And as a last step, I'll stick the negative sign back out front. So don't worry about the negative sign. Just stick it out front at the end, whether you're changing from mixed fraction to an improper fraction or vice versa. Sometimes you're going to be given questions where the negative sign's on the bottom, but you don't have to leave it there. You are perfectly free to move that negative sign up to the top, and that's what I think you should do. So I change that to -4/5. I'd change 1 1/10 to 1 times 10 plus 1 is 11 over 10. I'd get a common denominator, and I notice that 5 goes into 10, so I can use 10 as my common denominator. If I multiply the first fraction, top and bottom, by 2, I get -8 over 10. And then I'm going to add -8 plus 11. -8 plus 11, remember what we've done in some previous lessons. I could just do 8 minus 11 and take the sign of the, 11 minus 8 and take the sign of the bigger one, which is positive. So I'd end up with 3 over 10. And I can't reduce that. And I can't change that to a mixed number because it's not improper either. That's my only possible answer. And there's one more example in this short lesson, just sort of throws everything at us. So first we're going to change it from a mixed fraction to a improper fraction. So 13 times 3 is 39, plus 1 is 40. Notice how I did nothing with the negative sign yet. So then I'll put the negative sign up top. Again, for the next one, I'll forget about the negative sign to start with. So I'll just do 1 times 9 is 9, plus 7 is 16, over 9. Put the negative sign up top. Make it divide. Okay, no problem. Now, I want to change my divide to a multiply. So the first fraction doesn't change. Everything's exactly the same. Change this to a divide, from a divide to a multiply. Flip it upside down so the 9 goes on top now, but I'm going to leave the negative sign up top, just to keep things simpler. Again, I could multiply negative 40 times negative 9, but I'm going to get a big number. I'm going to get 360. Why not make it smaller if I can? 3 goes into itself once. It goes into 9 3 times. Leave the negative sign there. Also, I know that 8 goes into 16 twice. 8 goes into 40 5 times. Leave that negative sign there. And again, now my numbers are pretty small, or smaller. So now I've got negative 5 times negative 3. It gets a little bit messier, so you have to be able to good at picking out what you need. So the top, I'm doing negative 5 times negative 3. We know that a negative times a negative is positive. So negative 5 times negative 3 is positive. 5 times 3 is 15. The bottom, 1 times 2 is just 2. And it's pre-reduced for me again. 2 goes into 15 7 times with 1 left over, so I could rewrite that as 7 1/2. And that is the end of that. Just a few extra things for us to look at. So try the practice questions, see how you do.